What's good, everybody? I'm Anthony Goods, the Stanford gentleman, and I probably held every basketball job known to man. I moonlight as an NBA scout on YouTube, and I daylight as an assistant coach at Arkansas State. But today, we're going to be talking about basketball contract. Most fans probably know about NBA contracts, but overseas contracts, now that's a mystery. Well, I got my hands on a 2-year EuroLeague contract, and trust me, some of these clauses will blow your mind. We're talking guaranteed money, NBA buyout clauses, and restrictions that could end a career. Let's get into it. All right, so let's start with what everybody wants to know, the money. This is a 2-year contract worth $1.3 million. Year 1 is $600,000 and year 2 is $700,000. In Europe, salary payments go out monthly over the course of the season. Europe has been notorious for late payments since the beginning of time, but these are the dates that the payments are supposed to come in. Bonuses, which we'll see at the bottom of the page, usually get paid out a month after, unless otherwise specified in the contract. If we skip down to the breach section, the team can be 30 days late from the payment date before a player is able to submit a warning letter, and from that point, the team has 7 days to pay the player before the player can break the contract. In these situations, players usually wait a little longer before they break the contract, but it all just depends on the situation. Whatever the final amount is that the team ends up paying the player, the team normally pays for the domestic taxes on his income. For Americans, though, even though the country does pay your taxes, you might still have to pay some taxes back home. The United States has a foreign tax exclusion, which your first $126,000 is essentially tax-free. So if we subtract $126,000 from $600,000, we get down to $474,000 that is taxable income in the United States. Sometimes just because your team pays your taxes doesn't necessarily mean that you personally pay taxes. In countries like France, it's like the United States where you personally have to pay taxes. So that is essentially kind of like a credit against your taxes in the States, if I'm not mistaken. So if we have $474,000 of taxable income, that will put him in the 35% tax bracket in regards to federal taxes. Now, depending on which state he lives in, he would also probably have to pay state taxes. So for state taxes, let's say he lived in California, he'd probably have to pay an extra 10% in taxes. So all in all, I'm not a tax guy, but I imagine he'd have to pay around $180,000 in taxes once he came home. On top of that, there's another catch. He's got to donate 1% to the foundation of former players. Now, this is a foundation that I guess helps former players if they have like crazy circumstances or, are really in need. So eventually he could probably cash in on this if necessary. Hopefully it won't be. But in this instance, he's going to have to pay around $6,000 the first year and $7,000 the second year. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Every player dreams of the NBA, right? Well, this contract has what we know as an NBA buyout clause. The player can terminate this contract to join the NBA, but only between seasons and only during a specific window, before July 13th. And get this, if an NBA team wants him, then they have to pay $900,000 to release him. That's more than his entire first year's salary. But here's the most insane clause that I've seen in any contract. Now, we all know these rivalries in Europe run deep. And in this contract, if the team decides to release the player after his first year, he's allowed to sign with any team except this team's rival. And if he decides he wants to sign with this rival after the first year, and after the team releases him, he has to pay $1 million in penalties. Think about that. Sign with the wrong team and you owe more money than you made your entire first year season. It's not just a contract clause, that's a financial nuclear option. But now let's move forward and let's talk about what other control a team has over a player's life. Now, this is pretty consistent as to what you'll see in the NBA or any other athlete's contract. No motorcycles, no skiing, no bungee jumping, no boxing. The player can't even ride an electric scooter without permission. And get this, they need approval to play golf or tennis. Imagine having to ask your boss to play a round of golf on your day off. That's a little excessive. Tennis, I maybe get because you can tear an Achilles, maybe an ACL or whatever it may be, but golf, that's a bit extreme. But when you sign on the dotted line, you sign your life away. It's not all restrictions though. Let's talk about some of the benefits. Most teams in Europe, they give you an apartment, they give you a car, you have medical coverage and whatnot. But let's dive into this contract. So what a lot of EuroLeague teams will do is they'll give you a stipend for housing. In this contract, it looks like they give you 500 euros monthly, which doesn't seem like a lot of money. And then the player can pay whatever else they want if they want a more expensive apartment. In Europe, you can't find apartments that are 500 euros, but I'm pretty sure he wanted to live a little nicer. So I'm pretty sure that this 500 euros was nothing compared to his actual rent that he ended up paying out of his pocket. We also see a car with full insurance, all travel and food expenses covered. Pretty sure that's just on the road. And 3 round-trip flights to the US per season. Now, this is where you can kind of finesse things in your contract. So I used to get these 2 or 3 flights in my contract, and then as I got older, I got smarter. See, the team is thinking that, okay, you're going to fly back to the United States, and that's $1,000, right? However, I used to like to travel around Europe, so I used to tell them, instead of 3 flights, give me $3,000. Obviously, this is unless you have first-class tickets in your contract. So the team, in turn, would give me $3,000 as kind of like a travel allotment. And then I would use that to travel around Europe. So if I wanted to go fly to Paris for the weekend and it was $300, that's only $300. So I would essentially be able to take maybe 6 flights or 7 flights over the course of a season if I did the small flights and I wanted to travel, as opposed to just the 3 flights back and forth to the United States. That's a vet move for you rookies out there, though. Another thing that's in this contract is like a no-cut clause. So just like the NBA, you can't cut a player for performance. It's 100% guaranteed. However, I am still under the belief that in Europe, nothing is guaranteed. I feel like if you're playing bad, they'll find a way to get you out of that contract. One of the last things we'll talk about are agent fees. In Europe, the teams pay the agent directly, normally in the amount of 10% of the total salary of the player contract. And this payment is usually broken up into 2 payments throughout the year. So if something crazy happens in the middle of the year, like a player gets kicked off the team, or if he gets cut, or if he gets injured, then the agent's fee won't be paid in full. This is another reason why some agents try to get you to stick it out if things are getting a little rough with the team. Now let's move on to dispute resolutions. What fans probably don't know is if you have a problem with your contract or with the team, it doesn't go through regular courts. All disputes go through something called the Basketball Arbitral Tribunal in Geneva, Switzerland, also known as the BAT. And everything is kept confidential. That's why you never hear about these contract disputes, even though some details do get leaked. And it's always tricky when you decide you want to go sue a team, because you have to put up money, then the team has to put up money. A lot of times these disputes last for like a year, could be even 2 years before you even see the money if you win, or depending on if you lose, now you owe money to the team. So depending on how much money is owed or how much money is being disputed, it may or may not be worth it to go through FIBA and the BAT process. So there you have it, a real look inside an overseas basketball contract. $1 million penalties, lifestyle restrictions, guaranteed money, and escape clauses. All things that can ultimately change a player's career path. These players are making good money, but a lot of these players are also giving up freedoms and taking on risks that a lot of fans don't realize. What surprised you most about this contract? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to see more breakdowns of contracts, I might have some NBA and some more overseas contracts in the shed. But that's it. Please hit the like and subscribe. Again, I'm Anthony Goods, coming from Arkansas State, and I'll catch y'all next video. I appreciate y'all.